What is going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I want to thank you guys for joining me for another replay battle. Today I have a very, very close 3v3 battle on the new 0.96 hotfix, which I believe is available to all of you now. So happy that you guys can finally enjoy the fruits of both the dev team and the testing team's labor. I think it's probably the best that Reforged has ever been, but that's my personal opinion. I'm sure you guys will let me know about what you think of the patch down in the comments section. But before we get into the replay and army comps and all that good stuff, let me just say that it is wonderful to be back. I had an excellent time in London. I got to meet Carindol from the dev team and Sawbones McTavish, who you guys have seen in some of my previous videos. If you guys have been following me since the beginning, we had a great time. Really got to live it up while I was there, so it was awesome. But it's good to be back now. So I thought to myself, what better way to celebrate coming back from London than with a extremely close come-from-behind comeback victory. So, without any further ado, let's get into the army comps and then finally into the replay itself. I hope you guys enjoy it. The first army we're going to look at today is the forces of Rhudaur, being commanded by our very own Crimson Behelit, who is behind many of the awesome new additions in the 0.96 patch, including the brand new Olokai model, which unfortunately isn't going to get shown off, I don't believe, in this battle, but damn is it beautiful and super high res and straight out of the movies. So if you guys haven't played with Mordor yet, it's time. What are you waiting for? Go and play with Mordor. They have very much changed over the course of the cycle of 0.96. So yeah, they're awesome and they've got some cool neutrals. But in any case, Crimson Behelit bring in a couple units here of the Rhudaur Axemen, who are actually able to hide anywhere. So a very strong shock infantry unit with, of course, AP, given that they are two-handed axes, and you can use them to launch some pretty surprising ambush attacks onto enemy lines. You know, under the right circumstances. He's also bringing in some Arthedain Rangers, who from 0.95 have actually changed quite a lot. Rangers previously had 24 ammo, which is one of the highest in the game. Now they have 14, and they are limited to a single unit before the price increase, but price increases have also undergone some pretty serious overhauls. Now, a unit like the Arthedain Rangers, I believe, are going to cost about 50% extra when you go over the red limit. So it is possible to go over the red limit for certain army comps in specific situations where you think a unit might be useful, but it is not something that you will probably want to do all of the time. But because they have changed so much and it's very methodical, there is very much a lot more possibilities out there in terms of army comps. So I will be doing a video on army comps in the very, very near future, because I have had a fair amount of requests for that. So I will go over that again in detail, and I will give you kind of my thoughts and my approach when it comes to making an army, which will hopefully help you guys really settle into the new meta and just generally do really well when you're playing with a new faction, or even with factions that you're familiar with. But in any case, Arthedain Rangers, still very strong, but they are very much changed and a little bit more situational. Not necessarily if you have Rangers, you bring them automatically because they are so good. Now it's a little bit trickier than that. From we got a couple units here of the Rhudaur Marksmen, who have a ton of arrows, and they still enjoy a much higher, not much higher, but it's a noticeably higher ammunition pool than other units, like, say, the Dunman Hunters here. Now, lower tier archers have been very significantly changed. In fact, all archers are capped at 2 before you go into the red increase and etc. and all that other stuff that I said previously still applies there. But they've got less ammunition now as well, and that's to kind of make your elite tier archers a lot more useful and allow them to be more successful in their role as heavy elite tier archers. And a big kind of problem that came up in 0.95, at least in my opinion, was in my opinion, obviously, is the only one that matters. I'm the one in charge of stats. I'm kidding. It's not. But in my opinion, the lower tier archers were very, very strong. And there wasn't a ton of reason to bring the elite tier archers, except if you're going to use them as, say, infantry, in the case of the elves and things like that. So now that gap has been narrowed a fair bit. I believe they used to have 20 or 22 or something like that, but now they're down to 18, the same as kind of your any standard mid-tier archer is going to have about 18 ammunition. So that gap has been closed so much, but they do still have their numbers as well, which is very useful. A couple units here of the Troll Shot Axe Throwers. Very, very deadly, and all handheld projectiles have actually gone down by 1 ammunition. So if they had 5, now they have 4. If they had 4, now they have 3, etc., etc. I got some Arthedain pikes here as well. Very, very strong unit. I would say one of the better pike units in the game because of their shield values. They've got 6 shield, I believe, which is pretty significant. They don't have a ton of armor, but shield value from the front, from what I understand, it doubles when taking damage against missiles from the front, but honestly that's unconfirmed, so I'm not 100% sure about that. But still, any shield value is going to be very, very welcome for a pike unit, especially one that is quite light on the armor. Out and behind, we got a unit here of the Arthedain nobles with Floki as their general. I love that general unit. It's way too cool. Nice little call out to Vikings there. I don't know if that was done by the team or done by DAC or somebody else, but yeah, it's pretty damn cool. Arthedain nobles, of course, a very strong knight unit, a little bit more lightly armored than your average run-of-the-mill knight units, like, say, the Knights of Inuminas, for example, but they are AP, both on the charge and in close quarters, so that's something that you can not underestimate when it comes to fighting other knight units. Got some Rhudaur swordsmen here as well, looking very sexy, and we got, I believe, 2 units of the Black Wolves. I could be wrong. I think there's a second unit of Black Wolves here as well. Maybe that's just the one, but the Black Wolves have been changed as well. They used to have 170-something men in the unit. Now they have 120, I believe, on max unit size. So that's a big change for them, but they were really, really strong, and I believe they are still capped at 2, so you can bring a fair amount of them. But of course, a unit like this, very lightly armored. I think they have 1 or 0 armor, so their armor value is extremely negligible, and any archer unit is going to be able to do fairly well against some of those with that horde formation. They are a little bit harder to hit than, say, a unit like the Isengard Berserkers. But in any case, moving on now, we got some Coalfell Maidens here, Spear Cav, also Jav Cav. Jav Cav got a nice buff into .96, a lot more accurate now, so they are much better at their job, and of course they can be used as anti-cavalry units in, you know, after they use all their ammunition and that sort of thing. Got some Dunmen Scouts here, who I can't remember what changes they got. I think they didn't get smaller. I think they got some stat buffs, but they might cost a little bit more, something like that. But that does it for Crimson Behelit's army. Let's move on now to the Dwarves of Erebor. And if you guys haven't noticed, let's take a moment here and appreciate the kick-ass faction icons that WK has developed. They are all high res and absolutely beautiful. So yeah, really, really good job there. The dev team really came out from .96 and delivered some pretty awesome content. But in any case, this Dwarves of Erebor army is being played by BOP Tanter, who is, I think, new. I don't think I've ever played with him or seen him in any of my replays, so welcome to the community in that case. But he's got some Mercenary Cav here, I believe 2 units of them, one here, one on the other wing. And he's got a ton of miners. He's really gone for a numbers approach here, which is pretty cool. Mostly I see people go for like the elite units and support them with some of the more mid-tier dwarven units, but this is a little bit more focused around, I would say, AP, given the amount of miners that he has, but also numbers, which is kind of nice to see. You don't really see that from the dwarves too often. But in any case, I digress. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units of dwarven miners. Got the full complement here. Very, very cheap as well. A lot of cheap AP there. Got, I believe, the full complement of 3 units of Ironfoot crossbows, a ton of Ironfoot spears here, which I believe are going to be backing up those dwarven miners. I also got 1 unit of the Blacklock engineers, and over here we have a dwarven catapult, a unit of Highborn of Erebor, who, these guys are awesome. They're honestly one of the best infantry units that the Dwarves of Erebor have available to them. Although maybe not so much now. It's not as an easy of a choice that Dragon Slayers have AP, but yeah, still a very strong unit, and they also inspire units around them, so they're going to keep some of these lower tier units, like the Dwarven Miners, for example, in the fight for a little bit longer. But I think that does it for the Dwarven army, so let's move on now to the 3rd and final member of the blue team. We have Khand being played by DI Savage Paradox, and I always look forward to games that Savage Paradox is in because he has an interesting approach to how he plays them. It's never the same way, at least in my opinion, twice. From what I've usually seen with him, he likes to go for really numbers-heavy armies and like long formations, and he's good at keeping them under control as well, which is definitely a challenge when you go for numbers and you have these big, broad formations. You know, they do take more time to respond to threats and things like that, but he manages to micro them quite efficiently, so it's always fun to see. But in any case, he's got some Brotherhood of the Bow, some Variag Wind Riders who have a new model. I believe this one is taken from DAC, and god damn does it look cool! I absolutely love it. So great job to whoever on the DAC team was in charge of that. They're just so sexy, and I really hope that this model kind of makes its way into Khand and Rune a little bit more generally. Although maybe keeping it kind of localized to some of the Variag units would be a nice little flavor thing. But in any case, got some Nurad Windblades here as well, who are just so damn sexy and so strong against cavalry. easily one of the best anti-cavalry units in the game. They are a little bit more lightly armored than you'd expect from... Can I really call them a knight unit? I would say that they are very comparable to knights. But yeah, they are a little bit more lightly armored. Got some Rhudaur footmen here, an old favorite of Khan's that just really never gets old. They've got low melee damage, but they are AP, so against your standard men-at-arms unit, the numbers and the AP more than make up for their lower melee defense and attack values. And of course, they've got really badass shields as well, which I think nets them about 9 shield value, 8 or 9 shield value, so very, very strong against arrows and things like that. I got some nomadic light infantry here. I believe 4 or 5 units of the nomadic light infantry, possibly as high as 6. Yes, indeed, we got 6 units here. And we have a new unit as well for Khans. Now, I believe this is based on an anime that some of the guys have been reading, like WK and Crimson Battleet and Kuroguro channel tend to read the same sort of like manga books and things like that. And I believe this comes out of that, and Son of the Dark Clouds should be included in that list as well. So yeah, this unit definitely very heavily inspired from that. And I believe there's a new general unit for Khan, which does not seem to be in this unit. But the Neurod's War Chief Retainers work a little bit differently than your standard halberd unit, like the Neurod halberds, for example. They don't have spear wall, but they have better stats overall, and of course they've got shield value and heavier armor and 2 HP to boot. And I believe that they get the Spear Bodyguard's morale bonus, so it's going to be very, very useful for keeping units like the Nomadic Light Infantry, for example, in the fight for even longer. A couple units here of the Variag Bowmen. I think we just have the 2 units of Variag Bowmen. Some more Neurod Footmen. Over on the other end, we got another unit of the Variag Windriders and the Brotherhood of the Lance, one of the very, very few Lancer picks that Khan has available to them. I think we've got some Chieftain's Vanguard as well, but I'm almost certain that there's a unit of the Variag Cataphracts hanging around here, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe I am. But in any case, that does it for the blue team. Let's go ahead and see what the red team has brought to the battle today. Across the field from Khans, we have the forces of Arthedain being commanded by DF Thorn. Now, DF is, I believe, Durin's Folk, which is one of the clans on our Discord. So if you guys are interested in being a big part of the community, clans are very, very significant. They actually have their own events, like Clan Wars, that are hosted on the official Discord. Then I recommend that you go and join the official Discord with the link down in the description, and from there you can find your way into the more clan-specific Discords and things like that once you join them. But in any case, Arthedain, a faction that has undergone some pretty big changes. Now, previously, the philosophy when approaching Arthedain was that have them be kind of an everyman faction. Now, many factions have faction bonuses. There's like pros and cons to those. Like for Rune, for example, Rune gets extra shield value and a little bit more attack, and I think some extra morale as well, but they have a big, significant debuff to their melee defense. So, things like that. Now, Arthedain previously did not have those. They were just a baseline. If you want to get into the game, but you don't want to play one of the more specialized factions, then Arthedain is the way to go. Now, a result of that is that Arthedain was just kind of okay. I mean, they weren't awful, but they were just kind of alright. You could do well with them in most situations, but you know, it was a bit harder to play them, which wasn't really what we wanted to go for. So now they've got their own set of faction bonuses. Unfortunately, I don't remember what they are, despite the fact that I, made them. But they are... It pushes them towards being a little bit more cavalry focused, from what I remember. Their cavalry units get some pretty decent buffs as well. But in any case, DF Thorn, he's got some Arthedain marksmen. I believe he's got 2 units of them. Could be wrong about that though. No, he's maybe just got 1 unit there and a unit of Even Dim archers. He's also got some Arthedain men-at-arms, some Arthedain pikemen, 2 units of Arthedain pikemen, and another unit over here of the Arthedain men-at-arms. Now, I have heard some feedback. Tyler Sturm, I'm looking at you. About Arthedain men-at-arms being not all that great. The fact of the matter is that most of the men-at-arms units, they're not powerhouses. They need to be supported. They're a great building block, and they make a decent front line, but they're not powerhouse units by any means. There's not a ton of killing power behind men-at-arms units. They're good for dealing with other low tiers, for example, or other... holding their own against other mid-tier units, especially if you upgrade them. Their upgrades are very significant, and the Arthedain men-at-arms can be upgraded as much as any Numenorian faction, so they get 2 armor upgrades, which is really big. But yeah, so your men-at-arms units, they're your pawns on the chessboard. They can do well, but they are by no means the most powerful piece on the board. But in any case, moving on now, we've got some Dunai Peacekeepers here, who are pretty damn good. They've got higher melee defense, a little bit lower armor, I think, and then a lot of the Arthedain units. But the Dunai units tend to be a a little bit less armored. That has changed a little bit. They're kind of more like the mid-tier in terms of armor. But when it comes to like a unit of the Knights of Numinos, for example, the Peacekeepers can't really hold a candle to their armor value, but these guys do have really nice melee defense, and they have high attack. Especially for Spearmen, these guys can do really, really well. They are a little bit lower in number, however, as a consequence. Over here we got some dismounted Knights of Numinos, who, as I said, are very strong, have a lot of armor, some really good attack values as well, and some decent shield to boot. Got some mercenary war chiefs here, very, very sexy. Now, this is a unit that's kind of in a weird place. My personal feeling, and don't let this discourage you from using the unit and finding uses for it. I mean, half the fun of this game is it's tactics. It's finding creative ways to overcome challenges. And there's a great life lesson to be learned in there. But in any case, this unit is a little bit strange. They have pretty decent baseline stats. They've also got a shield value, heavy armor, that sort of thing, but they are low on morale. It is actually quite easy to route these guys. I think they have about 8 or 9 morale, which is very low. And they're a little bit more expensive, probably more expensive than I would like them to be. Which, you know, may change in the future in some patch far down the way, but we have no hot fixes coming out and that sort of thing. We're all very content with where it is right now. So yeah, so it's a weird unit. It does have its own uses, and I encourage you to explore the possibilities of this unit. But for me, they're in a bit of a strange place. They're a bit expensive, and the morale isn't the greatest. But again, they're not a terrible support unit. Anyway, over here we have some Dune 9 Mounted Company. As I said, Arthedain's cavalry is a little bit better on average. And these guys are definitely no exception to that rule. Very, very strong medium-tier Lancer unit. Over here we got some Knights of Numinos. So sexy. Oh, I love the Knights of Numinos. And not only are they beautiful, but they're also very strong as well. They're probably I would say, a mid-tier kind of knight unit. In behind the these guys Peacekeepers, 2 Knight Peacekeepers, yes indeed. We have a unit here of the Fornost Irene Knights, who are a two-handed shock unit, and they're pretty damn good. They kind of okay, so all of the human factions, they have these kind of swordmaster units like Dale, Umbar, Gondor, and Arthedain. They all kind of sit more or less around the same area. Now, they're usually within about 25 to 50 florins of one another, depending on the unit. And they all tend to do really good things. The Gondor Winged Swordsmen, for example, have better armor, but lower attack. The Fornost Irene Knights are a little bit more of a kind of middle ground there. The Dale Swordmasters, for example, really high, or higher than average, I would say, melee defense and a bit higher attack, but they are lower in armor, so it's easier to shoot them to death. So these guys will stand up really well against arrows and things like that, but the Dale Blade Masters will do better against, say, an AP unit in close quarters, something armed with a two-handed axe or a mace or something like that. So there's trade-offs to them, but the dismounted Fornost Irene Knights, not bad at all. Some Dune 9 Mounted Company. Now, I feel like I've spent way too long talking about Arthedain, and I apologize for the long interview. Don't worry, there will be timestamp stuff in the description. You guys will be able to navigate around at your leisure. Now, over here, we have the Bolks Champions. This is the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, being commanded by a Lucky Hussar, who's a really nice guy. And I think his clan, unfortunately, kind of dissolved around him a little bit, but he's a really nice guy, a really good player. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing what he does with the Misty Mountains here. But in any case, he's brought a unit of Bolks Champions, and he's got a couple units, I believe, of Cave Trolls. Now, Misty has undergone some pretty interesting changes as well. Maybe I should save all this for like a video or something, but, you know, I like to talk about this kind of thing. Now, the general consensus about the Misty Mountains was, one, they had way too many fear units, and they absolutely did, and that's been changed in a really big way. They've got far less fear units, but they also had way too many trolls. They could field like 8 trolls or something if they wanted to. I mean, it wasn't feasible to field 8 trolls, but they could if they so chose, and that really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So what's happened is they have lost the, not the Cave Troll unit, the Mountain Troll unit, in order to try and cut down on that. So that's another 2 units that of trolls that the Misty Mountains can't take anymore. Now they believe the Mountain Trolls are available to Gundabad and Mordor, pretty sure. But the Cave Trolls are interesting. They've got higher than average mass for a troll unit, and they are kind of a replacement to the Blackwatch Legion. Now, their formation is a little bit closer together than a lot of troll units, as you've probably noticed, and that plays into that kind of line-breaking role that this unit has been assigned. So, they're pretty strong. They also lost, I believe, about 6 or 7 trolls in the unit, and that was just to kind of narrow the gap between them and, like, Do I call them mid-tier? Yeah, we'll call them mid-tier trolls, like snow trolls, for example, who are a little bit more specialized. They're faster, they've got a shield value, but they would lose to cave trolls in kind of most situations. And just all around, the numbers that the cave trolls had was really, really good, and probably way too good for what it cost to bring them. So I think the cave trolls have also gone up in price a little bit as well. And so yeah, Misty Mountains changed quite a lot in terms of their troll roster. But Lucky Star bringing a ton of heavy goblin infantry here. Looks like we got 4 companies of them, very massive companies. Ah, yes. Now we have the Black Orcs of the Mountain. Previously a fear-causing unit. That is no longer the case. But they've also got a beautiful new reskin that fits so much better with the Misty Mountains aesthetic than the previous kind of more dated model did. And these are done by the Cowering Coma, by the way, so praise be to him, our resident whiz kid when it comes to models and textures and that kind of things. He's the guy who was behind the Umbar retexture that made them look a little bit more Numenorian. So you can see other examples of his work there. It's like him and Arthedain, probably my 2 favorite texture people. But anyway, I've fanboyed enough. Black Orcs of the Mountain, just 1 company of them, I believe. Out in front, we got a ton of the Heavy Goblin Spears. Now, really, really good units. No, I'll talk about that later. There's some changes between these guys and halberds, where previously, you know, halberds and these guys, they had a lot of things in common, but that's kind of been changed a bit. And I'll talk about that when I go into a Misty Mountains video, because that's going to be our next kind of faction overview. I guess our first faction overview is going to be of the Misty Mountains, where we'll talk a little bit more about units and that sort of thing there. But in any case, 1, 2, 3, 4 companies of Heavy Goblin Spears to accompany the 4 units of Heavy Goblin Infantry. Out in front, got some Heavy Goblin Archers, and 2 units of the Gobbo Archers. And out in front, it's going to be a unit of the Trolls as well. Crimson Behilit's own creations being used against him. Something very Frankenstein-esque about that. But in any case, these guys are really, really good. Now limited to 1, and I think a little bit more expensive. I think they cost about $9.50 now, whereas previously they were like $8.50, and you can get 2 of them. They're limited to 1 before the price increase. Still very good, though. They cause fear, they inspire units, it's so good. Over here we got some Drake Broodlings, very, very strong. They've also been, I think they've been reduced in strength by about 50%. Then we've got a unit over here of the Orc Skirmishers. Let's move on now to the 3rd and final Red Team Army. Finally, we made it through the army comps. Well, almost in any case. We have the army of Umbar being commanded by Lord Yale. Now, he's got a unit of the Warlords of Umbar, who are, in my opinion, one of the best-looking knight units in the game. Holy crap, are they sexy as hell. And again, that was done by Cowering Coma. Little model here based on Arpharazon the Golden, the last king of Numenor. And he's also got some Numenorian Lancers, who, as I'm sure many of you guys are noticing, they're very different looking, aren't they? And there's 2 variants of them. There's, of course, the Mordor variant, and there's these guys. And they were previously the Shield Guard, but now they're just Numenorian Lancers. But they look really, really nice. And I believe this is done by it was a collaboration between Cowering Coma, Carindel, and Sin of the Dark Cloud, I believe. But yeah, a very, very sexy unit indeed. Also got some Casimir's Legion here, previously known as the Casimir's Chosen. Looking very stylish indeed. And he's got a complement of 3 of them. Some Beliar Footmen on that wing. Some Abrazanim Nardu Tariq, the AP Mace Infantry, mixed in with some Beliar Halberds. Now, a small note on halberds. I'm sure many of you guys are getting tired of these small notes. It's like 20 minutes of army comps so far, but you know, I'm gonna cram all this information and there's nothing you can do about it. Halberds previously were just better versions of pikes with AP. Crimson Behilit found a way to lower their attack range. So now, in most cases, pikes will beat halberds, but halberds will, of course, do reasonably well against pikes. But pikes will generally kind of win. So now halberds are a little bit more anti-infantry. We experimented a lot with trying to make halberds a bit different from pikes, and this is what we ended up coming up with. I think it is probably as good as it is going to get. So these guys, good against heavy infantry, good against cavalry as well from the front, and not so great against pikes anymore. So that's kind of nice. Abrazanim Nardu Tariq lining the front lines here along with some Beliar Halberds. Second line here of some Beliar Archers, 2 units of them, and then out front we've got some Corsair Archers. So fairly skirmish heavy. Oh yeah, we've got some Corsair Pikemen as well in the back here. Not a ton of cavalry, but very, very infantry heavy. A lot of Casimir's Legion. Is that there? Yeah, Casimir's Legion, and a lot of some hard-hitting infantry on the front here. I think he's got 3 units of the Abrazanim Nardu Tariq, which is a bit more than what you normally expect to see. But in any case, that does it for the army comps. Let's go ahead and jump into the replay. Hope you guys enjoy it. The battle is going to begin with some aggressive cavalry play here on the part of Crimson. He's got some Dunman scouts here, backing up his Rhudaur nobles and his Coldfell maidens. And looks like he's kind of setting up, well, he has already set up, a bit of a killing zone here for the Umbar to advance into. So if I saw this, I would probably play the skirmish game for as long as I possibly could. With the Rhudaur first. What do you know? He's got a couple units here of the Entmore Troll Hunters, who I believe are Inspire units now. Sorry, army composition phase is done now, I swear. But yeah, Rhudaur's got a couple Javelin units here as well. And very skirmish heavy. Very, very skirmish heavy, which is kind of not what I expect to see from Rhudaur. I mean, you expect to have a lot of mid-range skirmishers when playing as or against Rhudaur, but there's a lot of bowmen mixed in here as well, and some skirmish cav, and just all kinds of stuff. So, an interesting army, but it is going to put him at a bit of a disadvantage given how infantry heavy the Umbar faction has gone, or the Umbar player rather has gone, and that's something that we've really tried to do in this patch, is to make infantry a lot more significant. So skirmish armies like this, I mean, yeah, they'll definitely be annoying, and there's still a place for them in the game, but infantry heavy army is not going to be at a complete disadvantage. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Now it looks like over on this end, the Misty Mountains advancing into a hail of artillery fire, and this is actually kind of smart. Now, normally I would not recommend using your cavalry this way against Goblin Infantry. It doesn't really put them at in a vulnerable position when the Misty Mountains have brought just this many skirmishers, 3 companies here of their very numerous archer units. And it can potentially make you lose your cavalry really early on. But from what I can tell, this is kind of the Dwarven player pinning them in place, allowing his artillery to get more and more shots off on the Misty Mountains army as they slowly advance, which is probably a really good thing, I would say. Misty Mountains rush army, it ain't no joke. And yeah, if you can try and thin out the numbers, even as the dwarf player has really gone for numbers, but if you can thin out their numbers, it's only going to do good things for you. Moving on over to this end, Arthedain opening the skirmish fight here with the oh, looks like got some Great Company who are hiding as well. Great Companies are a BP Ranger unit on horses, which is as sexy as it sounds. They've got a little bit more numbers, I think, than average, but they are a special unit. So yeah, that's kind of the bonus, I guess, for Arthedain. But the Great Company, nothing you want to play around with. Those very Egg Wind Riders will get massacred with their light armor by those BP Rangers. So that's not something that's not a position you really want to put them in. But in any case, let's move back on over to the Misty Mountains side of things in the center, because this really seems to be where the party is, doesn't it? Misty Mountains just going for it. Now, what do we got here? Ooh, it's a lot of dead goblins, and I'm wondering what happened. I think the Black Lung Engineers happened. That's definitely what went down here. Let's see what they fire at next. I think these guys have an area effect attack, which is probably why they're. Oh my God! Look at that! Absolutely murderous volley into the front of those heavy goblin spearmen. Although I think weakening one of these other units is probably a good idea as well. Dwarven Miner is taking the initiative here, going right for the front lines. Although with those bold champions there and the melee cav, very much overpowered in that sort of fight. Not in the sense that the melee cav are too good, but the bold champions are going to cut right through these guys. It's going to be a tough fight out here on the wings, I think, for the Dwarven player. It looks like maybe the Black Luck Engineers are going to be falling back now. I think a good target for them would be the Bolgs Champions. They're being pinned in place by the Mercenary Cavalry. The Mercenary Cavalry aren't going to be able to hold the line for too much longer, but a volley or two from the Black Luck Engineers would be enough to destroy these guys, and it's really going to even out the cavalry fight, because yeah, you don't want to get overwhelmed by the Misty Mountains. If they can surround you, and especially come in from the rear with a unit like the Bolgs Champions, which do still cause fear to infantry, ooh, that could be nasty, especially with so many of these lower tier troops on the field. A beautiful charge here by the Misty Mountains all along the Dwarven line. It looks like the Dwarven Miners are going to take the brunt of it. They're actually a really cost-effective trade here. They'll do really nicely against a unit like the Heavy Goblin Infantry, for example. I mean, these units will massacre one another, but now there's some support coming in the form of the Ironfoot Spears. That's going to be a nice one-two punch, and that's enough to really deal with the bulk of the Misty Mountains forces. There's Goblin Infantry in there, and Heavy Goblin Infantry as well. But in that kind of exchange, the Dwarves will definitely win. So it seems like the fate of the Dwarven army is going to be decided on their right wing. You can see more cavalry coming in. And it looks like Khand is trying to lend a little bit of support to their ally here as well, but Arthedain is on top of them with some dismounted, or some mounted Dunedain company. But we got some Drake Broodlings over here, and they're going to be charging headlong into Khand. It looks like the Chieftain Vanguard trying to help these guys out. But if like the Bolt's Champions and the Drake Broodlings, both of whom cause fear, if they get in behind the Dwarven lines, that's going to be ugly. What do we got over here? Some Heavy Goblin Spears have now managed to tie down the Blacklock Engineers. Blacklock Engineers, 2 HP, no slashes in melee. They will be able to beat these guys back eventually, but it is preventing them from supporting the rest of their army. Meanwhile, the Dwarven flank it's been overrun at this point. You got some Black Ruriks now moving around, some Drake Broodlings now in behind the lines. Dunedain Mounted Company from Arthedain as well, moving in to support their ally. And yeah, the Dwarves they're in a bit of a pickle here, I would say. Got some Cave Trolls now charging through the weakened Dwarven center. There's really no unit of any sort of consequence that's really in here to save them. Ooh, these Dwarven Miners, 114 of them routing because of the presence of these Cave Trolls. Cave Trolls no longer cause fear, but I think with the constant hammering that they're getting from the Misty Mountain Skirmishers, and now the addition of so many Cave Trolls and some casualties as well, that's a tough thing for a low-tier unit to stand up against. Reserve Company of Ironfoot Spears trying to plug the gap. Ironfoot Crossbowmen firing into the Dunedain Mounted Company, but the Dwarves are really just being attacked from all ends here. Now, I don't know where their second company of their melee cavalry has gone to. It looks like maybe they're picking a fight here with some of the Goblin Infantry. That's a fight that they're easily going to win, but there are some Wargs standing by. I got some Dunmen Scouts here moving in. Nice charge into the flank by the Dunmen Scouts, but they probably could have been a little bit more effective, I would say, if they weren't in just a column formation. But in any case, move now across the battlefield. Let's see how things are going with Umbar. It looks like Umbar being very aggressive with their cavalry here. But the Rhudaur forces are going to really make them pay for it. Numenorian Lancers getting cut down left and right by a savage volley from the Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters. And yeah, that's a important unit to take some pretty meaningful casualties on early on in the game. Now, the Rhudaur forces have a fair amount of cavalry as well. Most of the cavalry, though, it's anti-cav. So 2 units of the Coldfell Maidens, for example, make up fully half the Rhudaur cavalry force. The only thing that really has a deadly charge is the Hereditary Nobles. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens as we move into the later stages of this fight. Now, Rhudaur very well poised to just absolutely envelop the Umbar. Umbar now moving forward in a big way. Everything they got straight on into the guns, the teeth of the Rhudaur skirmish line. Now, a lot of the bowmen, I think, are in full retreat. Some of these Ettenmoor Troll Hunters are being repositioned, so those looks like they're not going to take a lot of hits on the approach, which is great for Umbar. They've definitely got the advantage in terms of infantry. But some of those units like the Ettenmoor Troll Hunters, for example, could really swing the battle in favor of Rhudaur. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So before those 2 lines clash, let's see how Khand is doing against Arthedain. Looks like we got a big cav fight here. Dunedain Mounted Company about to get absolutely swamped by a couple units of Ariag Wind Riders. And I think they're also in combat against some Pneumatic Light Infantry. Now, there's a big opportunity here for Khand to completely envelop and destroy this unit of Dunedain Mounted Company, but now they're going to be able to get pulled out, and that's going to be a problem, especially without any cavalry support on this Khandish right wing. Pneumatic Light Infantry charging into battle against the Arthedain Men-at-Arms. Meanwhile, a second company coming in from behind them. Ooh, that's going to be nasty for the Arthedain Men-at-Arms. There's a lot of numbers for them to carve through, and they don't really have any support. Ariag Wind Riders charging headlong into the Dunedain Mounted Company. An easy fight for the Wind Riders. They are extremely anti-cavalry oriented. Over in the back here, we got some Arthedain Marksmen and some of the Mercenary War Chiefs who are supporting them, being harassed by the Ariag Wind Riders. Lightly armored unit like that could be very vulnerable behind the lines like this. We got some Dunedain Troll Slayers in here as well. Wow, what do you know? A Javelin unit for Arthedain. Very, very strong, 2 HP, hide anywhere, and they're also deadly in close quarters with their AP. And what we got over here? Nurad Windblades, along with the Ariag Wind Riders, about to envelop that unit of Grey Company. Against these lightly armored units, these BP arrows are going to be nasties, so you want to try and take them out as quickly as possible and minimize your casualties, and begin to bring your cavalry to bear against the rear of the Arthedain lines. Meanwhile, what are the Knights of Numenor up to? in the process of hacking their way through some of the Brotherhood of the Lance, who have now been completely annihilated as far as I can tell. Unless they manage to escape destruction. Chieftain Vanguard and some Brotherhood of the Bow exchanging volleys with the Evendim Archers. Not a very cost-effective trade. There's the massed volley fire against some of the more lightly armored units like this. Now, these are admittedly some of the heavier units that Khan can field, but they are by no means a 10 or 12 even plate armor unit, so eventually they will be whittled down, but just the sheer volume of fire. But it looks like some of the Neuride Windblades were in the process of evening out that fight a little bit. So now the Evendim Archers down to a meager 78 men in the unit. Dunai Peacekeepers trying to defend their vulnerable archer compatriots, but it's not really doing a whole lot for them. Oh, that's a nasty javelin volley from the Dunai Troll Hunters into the Neuride Windblades. That's going to cut down a significant number of them. So now the Neuride Windblades down to 15, 13, 12 of their number. What we got going on in the back here? Very Wind Raiders have chased down the Great Company by the looks of it, and they're going to have a field day hacking down those lightly armored rangers. But let's pop on over to the Umbar fight. Instead, we get back here, and yeah, here we are. Belgier Halberds amassing against the Arthedain pikemen, supported by a little bit of Rhudaur swordsmen. Not looking great for Umbar right now. They've really kind of advanced into the prepared killing zone that Rhudaur has prepared for them, but Casimir's Legion here fighting hard against the Edmore's Troll Hunters. They're going to have no problems whatsoever dealing with those guys. Numenorian Lancers coming in from behind. Ooh, this could be the support that the Umbar player needs to win the infantry fight. A beautiful hammer and anvil charge there by the Numenorian Lancers. Definitely going to want to get out of there, though, before any of those pikes turn around and focus their attentions on them. Over on this end, Warlords of Umbar charging in to the Edmore's Troll Hunters, who are being pinned in place by the Belgier footmen. Great play here on the part of Lord Yale. Those Edmore Troll Hunters, a very important unit for Rhudaur, not only because of their deadly javelin volleys, but also their Inspire effect, which will help the Rhudaur forces, who already have higher morale, fight for just that much longer, being isolated and destroyed here. So, Rhudaur had a very clear plan moving into this, but it looks like Umbar is kind of throwing a wrench into that. So, really, really nicely done there on the part of the Umbar player, with a hammer and anvil strike here coming in into the rear of this pike block by the Numenorian Lancers. Not as nearly as effective, though, as the previous one. But all things considered, Umbar seems to be in a bit of a pickle. Although I say that now, a lot of the Rhudaur cavalry being driven back. Again, their cavalry mostly anti-cavalry. So in this kind of hammer and anvil situation, or where they're trying to, say, fight Corsair archers who are infantry, for example, those Coldfire Maidens aren't going to do nearly as well. Now, I'm really curious about the fate of those Arthedain nobles and what they happen to be doing. Looks like they're going toe-to-toe with the Warlords of Umbar, and that's not going well for them at all. Only 8 of them left. Crimson Bailey trying to hightail it out of there as quickly as he can. But let's go on and see how the Dwarves are doing. And it's not looking great for the Dwarves. We got a last stand here by the Dwarves of Erebor, being charged in the rear by the Drake Broodlings. But the Misty Mountains have really just massed against them, and a lot of dead miners all along the lines here. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fear effects that Misty Mountain was able to bring to bear. I mean, they had the Bulks champions, who I think are still really healthy at this point. They're actually in the process of eating the remaining crewmen for this catapult. But they've still got 19 left in the unit. There just really wasn't an answer on the Erebor side for these guys, which is surprising because Erebor does have some pretty decent cavalry options. But unfortunately, they just weren't used in this instance. Drake Broodlings charging their way through this formation. Don't worry, they're not killing all of those units. Most of them will get back up. They're not that blatantly overpowered. But yeah, the Drake's doing really, really well here. Hammer and Anvil charge into the rear of what remains of the Dwarven infantry, who are being hacked to bits by that 1-2 punch of Drakes and Black Rooks of the mountain. Over here, though, Ironfoot crossbows gathering around the Highborn of Erebor, and all that remains of the Dwarven infantry really seems to have gathered around their leader. They're now putting up a last stand on this green hill. Meanwhile, this company of Heavy Goblin Spears coming from behind. AP, very, very deadly against a faction like the Dwarves, who are low on melee defense. Over on this end, the Ironfoot crossbows have really managed to kind of bottle up this unit of Goblin archers. It says that defeat is a distinct possibility, but I think these guys will do pretty well against them, given how heavily armored they are and how kind of useless these units are in close quarters. Both champions coming in from behind, though. Looks like they're not going to give the Ironfoot crossbowmen their time to shine. We're going to have a nasty hammer and anvil charge. Ooh, I wonder if any of these guys are going to turn around. If they do, they're going to get impaled. Nope, there you have it. Hammer and anvil into the rear of these Ironfoot crossbows, who are just starting to bring it back. Ah, so sad. Although it wasn't as deadly as I think you would expect. Yeah, there you have it. Some of them are starting to fall, but damn. Well, let's pop on over to the Khand and Arthedain fight and see how things are going. Variag Wind Riders running around doing what they do best. Dunedain Rangers that are apparently hiding with the Arthedain force. Now thoroughly surrounded. I got some Dunedain Troll Slayers over here as well to support them. And I think once they get engaged in combat against the Red Foot, then they're going to be able to turn that thing around. But it really looks like Khand has kind of swept the field clean of Arthedain. Charge here from the Chieftain's Vanguard into the Dunedain Troll Slayers. Over here we got the Knights of Inuminas trying to support their infantry against his Nomadic Light Infantry, who are honestly, they're not going to be able to break through the wall of steel and nerve, and that is the Dunedain Peacekeepers. They're going to be doing just fine against them, but it looks like for the most part, Khand really has won the infantry fight, and Arthedain is... Yeah, they've basically been destroyed, so they're going to bug out now with everything they got left. At least those elements of their army which are able to flee. Got the Knights of Inuminas here, running the asses away, trying to get away from that slaughter. Now, Orcs of the Misty Mountains, I think... Yes, they are not on Khan's side at all. And they're going to be barreling straight towards the Variag Bowmen, who are still in very good shape at this point. But it looks like Misty Mountains is about to change that in a pretty big way. So the Drake Broodlings getting a wonderful side charge here against those Variag Bowmen. Look at the damage that they're going to do. That is just going to be... That is very significant. Now, one thing to note about the Drake Broodlings, and this is actually why the Khand player is using his fire arrows against them. These guys are real weak to fire arrows. Fire arrows absolutely melt the Drake Broodlings. Nobody except Crimson Battle knows why. I have no idea what stat would govern that, but damn are they weak to it. And so the Misty Mountains player, Hussar, is going to be pulling them out of there as quickly as possible and going for a little bit more of an easier target. This isolated unit of Nomadic Light Infantry, for example, is going to be easy prey for those Drake Broodlings. But since Misty Mountains feels comfortable enough to pull some of their units out of the Dwarven fight, yeah, it looks like the Dwarves are definitely on their last legs here. Holding together because of the presence of their general and the general's bodyguard. And in this kind of grinding fight, the Dwarves will give pretty well as good as they get, but honestly, Misty Mountains is going to come out of this with a fair amount of troops still intact. Over here, the Ironfoot Crossbowmen still holding the line. They've done well for being a understrength, unsupported archer unit against all of these goblins. They have definitely done very well for themselves. Both champions just hanging out in the back here. Looks like Lucky Sar kind of lost track of this unit in the mix. I think it's probably because he's got a lot on his plate with the Drake Broodlings on the other end. But let's pop back over to the Rhudaur Umbar fight. Let's see who's going to win this. And it looks like Umbar has kind of pulled it back. Dost mine eyes deceive me. Trollshaw Axe Thrower is now being brought to bear against the Casimir's Legion, who are really giving the Rhudaur units what for. I mean, Rhudaur is all about that high damage, and their infantry is great. But Umbar simply outclasses their infantry in this kind of fight, and there's just not enough of the Rhudaur infantry to really overcome the investment that the Umbar player made in their infantry lineup. So the Casimir's Legion here, slowly but surely beating down the Rhudaur pikemen. Although if those Trollshaw Axe Throwers left to do their dirty work, then the Casimir's Legion are going to melt pretty quickly. Let's see what other assets the Umbar player has remaining. Got some Corsair Archers over here. Who I think we're fighting against Coldfell Maidens, but they've now been wiped out by the Warlords of Umbar. Still 13 at this late point in the battle. That is no joke. Black Wolves here, been fighting against a combination of Beligear Archers and Beligear Halberds, but ultimately they have been overcome. Charge there from the Warlords of Umbar I think is going to be enough to see those mad axe-wielding madmen off the battlefield. Rhudain Rangers, I think they're trying to fire into one of these big blobs of Umbar troops, trying to even things out just a little bit. Meanwhile, over here, got some Rhudaur Axemen fighting against some Corsair Blackguards, which I didn't even realize that Umbar had. But yes, Corsair Blackguards here meeting their maker at the hands of the Rhudaur Axemen. There's some Corsair Pikemen in here as well, and they've kind of sandwiched this unit of Rhudaur Axemen. They're going to be able to fight their way out of that, no problem. Now, much of Umbar's skirmish line is still very much intact, and that's a big deal, because they are going to be able to fairly effectively deal casualties against Trollshaw Axe Throwers, who have the unit turned with their long axis facing those archer units. So basically, no shot that those archers shoot is going to miss, and the Trollshaw Axe Throwers don't have a ton of armor either. So I see what Crimson Bailey is trying to go for here, but I don't think it's really working out for him. And those Casimir's Legion have been absolutely melted. You can see that the Axe Throwers are a very strong unit, but I think now that the Umbar Cavalry and the skirmishers have turned their attention on the Trollshaw Axe Throwers, it's going to be the end for Rhudaur. And looks like Arthedain has come over here as well, just adding that extra layer of difficulty to poor beleaguered Crimson Behelit. And now his Herodine Rangers looking like they might just rout. Rhudaur Axemen have now managed to fight their way out of that engagement with the Corsair Pikes and the Corsair Blackguard. Let's move on over to the center, where the Misty Mountains have just about finished off the Dwarves of Erebor. But all things considered, there's a lot of dead Orcs in the field. Now, Misty Mountains has a lot of troops left, but they are all about numbers. I mean, they are naturally going to have a ton of numbers. So the fact that, yeah, they've got lots of stuff here, but they also lost a lot fighting the Dwarves, which is good to see. Not that I'm biased, you know, good versus evil, blah blah blah, whatever. But I liked his approach to the game. I like that he tried the numbers approach out, which isn't something that I see from a lot of people. So yeah, it didn't pay off for him in the sense that he was able to get a victory, but I think there's other reasons for that. There were some comp issues there that made things hard against the Misty Mountains. But Khan has swept away Arthedain. Arthedain is no more. And that's going to be pretty much it. So I think I'm comfortable enough now to kick things up to full speed. And let's see what Umbar does against Rhudaur here. Now, it looks like we got some routing here. A lot of Trollshaw Axe Throwers now running away in fear from a combination of great company. Surprisingly enough, still alive. Managed to escape the tender mercies of the very cavalry. Both champions now being brought to bear as well against Rhudaur. And it's just all these hard-hitting cav units. And they're giving poor Crimson Behelit a lot of trouble right here. And that's basically going to be it for the Rhudaur army, which is surprising. When I was looking at the initial kind of opening phases of the battle, I would have said that because Umbar was advancing into kind of the prepared killing zone that Crimson Behelit had made for himself, that Umbar was going to be pretty hard pressed. But yeah, they certainly were, but they managed to come out of this with a fairly solid victory. Now, most of their infantry is indeed gone, and all they've really got is a lot of their skirmishers rather, and things like that. But yeah, they must come out with a victory, although it was a very, very close victory. So now, across the field, very, very close. Both sides within 2% of one another. And I think really most of the remaining forces for, I guess this would be the red team. For the red team, it's Khan. No, this is the blue team. Sorry, that's my bad. For the blue team, most of the remaining forces on the field is Khan. And Khan has a significant contingent of their infantry left. Got a lot of pneumatic infantry, light infantry here, and a ton of Nurad footmen as well. And especially against a faction like the Misty Mountains, that's pretty big. The Nurad footmen are excellent, absolutely tops at killing chaff armored units like a significant portion of the Misty Mountains roster. Heavy Goblin infantry, heavy Goblin halberds, things like that. These guys are very, very good at taking them down. So I would say the odds are definitely stacked against Khan at this point, certainly in terms of the numbers, but they've got a chance. They've definitely got a chance. Now, what we got over here? A big cloud of fire arrows firing into the rear of what remains of the Herodine Rangers, but that's going to be it for Rhudaur. Now it's just going to be a matter of the red team marshalling the remaining forces and sending them at all that remains of D.I. Savage Paradox's Khan army. But while we wait for everyone to get themselves in position, let's just take a moment and appreciate the sacrifice of thousands of dwarves and orcs to make this a really entertaining battle. That is a lot of dead units all over this battlefield, especially over here. Umbar versus Rhudaur, an absolute massacre. Umbar did come out on top, but most of their infantry is gone, and really they're just down to some cavalry and a lot of archers as well. So, damn. A very good fight so far, and the percentages definitely show that. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward just a little bit, and I'll see you guys in a few moments. Alrighty, now it looks like Misty Mountains is going to take to the field before the rest of, did I say her? Misty, whatever. Before the rest of Lucky Asar's allies can join him, which is, I don't know, that's pretty scary. Now there are some Arthedain forces here, which I actually didn't notice until just now. But yeah, a force of Dunai Rangers and some Dunai Peacekeepers, but the Umbar forces are still very, very far away, and against Khan's, given that most of the remaining infantry are Goblin infantry, against Khan's, I would definitely need to wait for my allies. And I think that could prove to be a fatal mistake for the Misty Mountains. The Nurad footmen, like I said, are absolutely awesome at tearing apart Goblin infantry. Now, I think the biggest problem for Khan is ironically, given that it is Khand, is going to be the amount of cavalry left for the red team. There's some real, like, hard-hitting, like, pipe-wielding, badass cavalry that can really prove to be a problem for a lot of these Khandish infantry. Now, Khand, as a consequence of having so many melee cavalry, Khand doesn't have any foot spear units. Oh, hi, little kitty. Oh, sorry, guys, my cat just came over and said hi to me. But yeah, they don't have a lot of spear units, so really they rely on their cavalry, and there's not a ton left. We've got some Variag Wind Riders here, which I'm sure will be useful. Chieftain Vanguard as well, a little bit more Variags, and a lone solitary Neurod Windblade. Yeah, it's gonna be a tough one, I think, for Khand, at least in terms of the cavalry fight. Variag Bowmen now opening fire as the Goblin Archers move their way into their range. And they're going to do pretty well. I mean, I don't know how much ammunition they still have at this point, but they are heavily armored, and they've got shields as well. So they'll be able to just soak up that Misty Mountain skirmish fire, which could be a problem for certain units like, say, the Nomadic Light Infantry, who make up a certainly non-negligible number of the remaining Khandish infantry. So yeah, it's good for them to, good for Khand certainly to soak up that missile fire and try and preserve the numbers for when the real party starts. Now, looks like we got some Warlords of Umbar here, now down to 2. Both champions at 19. That is a problem for Khand in a big way. Knights of Innuminas as well, 5 units of Knights of Innuminas. A lot of more archers coming down this way as well. Some Metal Gear archers looking like they still have ammunition. All 3 out of the 4 remaining Umbar archer units still have ammunition as well. So I think the prudent choice here for the red team would be to try and make Khand come to them. And it looks like that's going to be the case. DS Savage Paradox recognizes that he is at a big disadvantage when it comes to the skirmish fight, and he's going to move forward now with his Neurod Footman, which is, this is a way better way to go out than just simply getting shot to death. Variag Wind Riders here, moving forward along with the Chieftain's Vanguard. Yeah, they might be going after some of these smaller units of knights. But it looks like the Bulk Champion is going to be moving forward to answer that challenge. Chieftain's Vanguard, do they have any ammunition left? Ooh, if Savage Paradox isn't careful here, he's going to get either his cavalry cut out and flattened, or the Nomadic Light Infantry flattened. It looks like, yeah, this is the smart play here. Now you can see how much moving away from a charging cavalry unit. I know it sounds crazy, exposing your back to them is obviously the last thing on your mind, but you can see how much that charge was mitigated by that movement there from DS Savage Paradox. And those are some solid tactics there. It really shows how much experience that he has with the mod and with the Medieval 2 engine in general. Black Orcs of the Mountains are going to, I would say they would easily hack their way through the fighting Neurod Footmen. The Neurod Footmen. Neurod Warchief's trainers moving into the center as well. But look at these heavy goblin units. This is what I was talking about. They are getting butchered by the Neurod Footmen. That is not even fair. I mean, it's fair, but, like, if I was a heavy goblin unit, I'd be like, man, this isn't fair. What kind of asshole, like, gave me these stats? That would be me. But in any case, very one-sided fight here. The Neurod Footmen going to be slicing their way through. I got some Knights of Innuminas charging into the rear of some Nomadic Light Infantry who are engaged with the Dunedain Peacekeepers. That's going to be game over for those Nomadic Light Infantry. Got some Bulk Champions now in behind the line. Hammer and Anvil strike into the rear of the Neurod's Warchief Retainers. And they're going to be pulled out of there as quickly as possible, because once those guys turn around, the anti-cavalry bonus is going to be a problem. Variag Wind Riders coming in, trying to pin those Bulk Champions in place, and it looks like Savage Paradox is going to be going after them with his Neurod's Warchief Retainers at the same time. The Bulk Champion is going to have an opportunity to disengage. Variag Bowman, I think, might be going after the Bulk Champions. Probably it's not a bad idea. Yeah, nice shot there into the Bulk Champions. They do have 10 armor, though, so they will stand up to the, I believe, 5 or 6 damage that the Variag Bowmen have. Meanwhile, another unit of cavalry coming in behind the Khandish lines, and Khand is now in danger of being overwhelmed here by the sheer numbers of the red team. A beautiful hammer and anvil charge into those Neurod Footmen just turned victory into almost certain defeat there. Although the Bulk Champions are slowly being whittled down, but they're definitely being put to great use by Lucky Hussar. We've got some Casimir's Legion going after the Nomadic Light Infantry, who have just cleaned up a unit. I think there's Blackguards in there and some Halberds as well. But this isolated unit of Nomadic Infantry is going to be easy prey for all these archers. And like I said, they are quite vulnerable to archers due to their light armor. Oh, looks like the Conda General just went down, and that could be everything. But the red team needs to really scatter a lot of these units, especially with these Bolgs champions just being absolutely devastating in the back lines. That's when Rad Footman here really questioning their reasons for coming to the battlefield and thinking about maybe running away. Black Orcs of the Mountain kicking a lot of ass here, although Conda's now broken through the center, and they're poised to try to even that fight out a little bit. Black Orcs of the Mountain now being attacked on multiple sides. Got some Goblin Archers there being routed, and the Heavy Goblin Archers are certainly soon to follow them. Belly Gear Archers now in full retreat, being chased very, very closely by the Pneumatic Light Infantry. This is still very, very close. Another charge here from the Bolgs champions into the Pneumatic Light Infantry should be enough to rout them. They're down to 11, although I think the presence of the War Chief Retainers is what's really keeping these militia units in the fight at this point. What do we got over here? Variag Bowmen firing their fire arrows into the rear of the Black Orcs of the Mountain, who are starting to pull the fight back now against the Nurad Footmen. A lot of Nurad units over here as well, I think. Some Nurad Footmen fighting hard against Corsair Archers. That's an easy fight for them. Dunine Rangers being pursued by the Nurad's War Chief Retainers. This is really the linchpin of the entire remaining Kondish army, and DS Savage Paradox is putting them to great use. Charge there by the Nurad's War Chief Retainers into the Dunine Rangers. That's going to be a massacre. 2 HP unit like this with a high attack, they should have no problem defeating the Dunine Rangers, and indeed they are not. Those Rangers falling left and right, now on the verge of routing. It looks like most of Arthedain's remaining forces have been scattered, except, of course, for the Dunine Peacekeepers. What do we got going on over here? Ooh, some nasty charges by the Bolgs champions being put to great use. I've said it a million times in this video already, but these Bolgs champions are really what's stopping the Kondish player from running over what remains of the red team. And they're going to be able to scatter a unit of Nurad Footmen. Over here they're going to be going after what looks like the Variag Bowmen. Still, they have lost about half the unit. Still 10 of them at this late point in the game. That's game winning. They're going to be able to silence those Variag Bowmen long enough for the Black Orcs to close the ground without any further harassment. That's going to be nasty. That's going to be bad for those Variag Bowmen. I think now would be a good time to try and pull them out of there. I think both units are about to get swept away by the Bolgs champions. Ooh, nasty charge there into the rear of the Variag Bowmen. Going to be enough to scatter them. And Khan's still trying to keep it together. Very much so trying to keep it together. Just a few Nurad Footmen still left over. Some of those Peacekeepers, I don't know how they got routed. Probably with the intervention, I would say, of the Nurad's War Chief Retainers. Nurad Footmen now chasing down all that remains of Arthedain's forces. Looks like some of the Heavy Goblin Spears are, actually they're getting the better of these Variag Bowmen. Nurad Footmen are moving in to try and fix that. Bolgs champions, though, an ever-present menace. That could be a bad thing if these Nurad Footmen get charged in the rear. Oh, this unit here, they're just going to get massacred. Oh, that was painful to watch. And the Bolgs champions sweeping away another unit of those Nurad Footmen. Nurad's War Chief Retainers turning around, try and get a piece of those Bolgs champions. But they're kind of floating out here in no man's land, just trying to get close enough to those Bolgs champions to shut that unit down. But yeah, these Bolgs champions very, very floaty, just kind of flying around here, just unable to be pinned down. Black Orcs fighting against the Nurad Footmen. It's a reasonable fight, but another charge there from the Bolgs champions again into the Nurad Footmen. Looks like it might scatter them. Thank goodness for that General's Bodyguard, though. Nurad War Chief Retainers charging into the Black Orcs of the Mountain. Well, this is going to be no problem for those War Chief Retainers. Like I said, a very strong unit. Black Orcs of the Mountains really losing that fight quite heavily. Both champions dilly-dallying a little bit, trying to finish off what remains of those Variag Bowmen, but I think what they need to be used for right now is a Hammer and Anvil charge against the Nurad's War Chief Retainers, and that is looking like that's what's going to happen. A big Hammer and Anvil charge by that deadly Bolgs champion unit, killing a fair amount of those War Chief Retainers. But nonetheless, they are kind of hacking away these Black Orcs, and that's going to be all she wrote for this unit. I think it's about time for it to rout. Bolgs champion silencing what remains of the Nurad Footmen, and I think some Variag Bowmen in there as well. Nurad putting on the pressure with the two remaining companies of Belly Gear Archers. And it's really just down to the Nurad's War Chief Retainers. Hammer and Anvil strike. Oh, they managed to turn it around at a very opportune moment and hack down, I think, about 6 of the remaining 9 of those Bolgs champions. That's a big, big deal right there. That is a potentially game-changing result right there. Let's get down and dirty with it. See who they're hacking. They're still trying to hack down. Looks like a solitary black Rhudaur of the mountain. Fire arrows now. Just Umbar doing everything that they can to try and stop this unit of War Chief Retainers. Now the Bulks champions, ooh, they just got caught by those War Chief Retainers, and there goes Azog. That's it for the Misty Mountains army. Now that's basically all of the killing power of the remaining Red Team forces. It looks like this is going to be a beautiful come from behind victory by the New Rad War Chief Retainers, or by Khand and the blue team in general. But really, it's all coming down to these New Rad's War Chief Retainers, and they're going to scatter that company of Belgier archers. And they're going to pursue them, make sure that they don't return. But I think a better idea would be to go after the second company and try and kill them quickly. Yeah, no, I would not have pursued them this far. Hopefully he turns around. Maybe not. Oh, this is stressing me out. I don't want these guys to get shot to death. I want Khand to win this. They've come so far and really had to overcome a lot of challenges. Yeah, it looks like they're going to turn around now. They're going to go after the Belgier archers, and unless Umbar wants to kind of make Khand chase them for a really long time, well, then I don't think that Umbar's going to be able to pull this off. Belgier archer is getting destroyed, and that is it. Let's see what it is. 99 to 97. Very, very close indeed. A fantastic replay. Thank you so much to Crimson Behli for sending it in to me and for supporting the channel. Let's take a look at some of the kills here. Crimson Behli doing very well, 2,000 kills, 2,500 for the Dwarves of Erebor. So they did not. It looked a little bit like they got run over, but at least in the early game, they probably managed to pull it back a lot once they put their last stand up on that hill. But damn, 2,500. They got the second most kills in the entire game out of everyone. DS Savage Paradox, of course, getting a lot of kills as well. So the entire blue team just did beautifully. Let's see here. Arthedain kind of struggled a lot. It looks from the kills here against Khand, and I think it probably came down to a lot of the Khandish cavalry just being a big problem for Arthedain's cavalry. Arthedain didn't have a ton of cav to begin with. They had like 2 companies of the Mounted Dunedain, which are lancers, a knight unit, and 1 bow unit. Whereas Khand had a ton of melee cavalry, all of which are excellent at cutting down lancer units. And even knights, for example, can trade. A unit like the Variag Wind Riders can trade reasonably well with a unit of knights for much less cheaper. Lucky Asar did very well for himself, getting the most kills in the game, and being a significant portion of his team's remaining forces near the end. 2,600 kills, very impressive indeed. Yale did well against Rhudaur as well, 2,400 kills. Him and Crimson Behli really just wiped each other out. But all around, an excellent game. And I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed casting it. So, coming up next, it's going to be some of our Let's Play series. I really want to pick up with Hollow Knight. I want to play some Thrones of Britannia. I think I have a pretty decent Thrones of Britannia replay. So that will be coming down the pipe as well. But yeah, as for the rest, I suppose you guys will see. In any case, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. Hope you guys enjoyed this replay, and I'll see you next time. Hey everybody, bye!